Kentucky's Jaxson Robinson had an interesting season with the Wildcats. Had the opportunity to go pro after last season at BYU. Opted to follow Mark Pope to Kentucky. I think there was a chance he had some first round buzz at the end of last year, if I'm not mistaken. But he was somebody who was high or rising on draft boards. People were excited about the potential of him. Goes to Kentucky, is solid, average over 13 points per game, but the buzz around him kind of died. Projected to go undrafted, potentially be a late second round pick. We have him at number 76 on our consensus big board, on the Sleepers Media consensus big board. 76 is also the lowest anybody has him, which I find interesting in the way we tally these. I had him at 65 on my big board. I was the high man or low man, I guess you could say. Then he checks in at 73, 74, 75, 76 on the rest of your big board. So pretty general consensus there. That being said, NBA scouts do like him. There are a number of reasons why he was such a highly coveted transfer, why he started the way he did for Kentucky. So, what are the strengths of his game that he's going to have to rely on if he is going to make an impact in the NBA?
Shoot and defense. I think he does both those things. I think you can carve it out an incredibly long NBA career just by doing two simple things: get in the stance on one end, stand in the corner on the other, and wait for the basketball. And I think he can do both those things phenomenally. Even like the games he exploded for Kentucky, it's not like he was shimmying, doing step backs. It was a lot within the offense, and I think I'm pretty high on him. I ranked him where I ranked him because I went based off where I think they're going to be picked.
Mhm.
We also did this when like half the draft was still in the draft, to be fair too. He's like
It's
um,
true.
he's moved up substantially with all the withdrawals, I would guess. But I mean I don't think he's gonna be a first round pick. He's probably mid second round pick. I think he would benefit a ton from going the route like Trace Jackson Davis went, where he calls his own shot and says, "Hey, please don't pick me. This other like so and so team is going to pick me, or I'm going to sign with so and so undrafted," and he gets a couple years guaranteed.
Mhm.
Um, I think he'd benefit a ton from picking his own spot because if he chooses the right spot, I think this is a guy who could start in the league for quite a while.
He has some of that potential. Like he showed he could do a lot of different things. Like there were times he ran point for both BYU and Kentucky and looked good doing so. Like he is a 3-and-D guy, I think, at his core, and that's where he projects to the NBA. But there is more to his game. Like there is some playmaking chops there that maybe tantalize you a little bit. And I think for everything that Mark Pope did at Kentucky this last season and I think maximize that roster, the lack of true role definition for Jaxson Robinson, I think hurt Jaxson Robinson's draft prospects.
Elaborate on that because I actually think the role he played is the reason he's being drafted, and Otega always still in college.
See, I think Otega Owe would go before Jaxson Robinson if Otega had stayed in the draft.
But I think if Otega played the role Jackson did, where it's a little bit more like he's not the primary scorer as much,
Mhm.
like Jackson getting hurt, I think hurt Otega's stock a lot. Like if Otega played a true 3-and-D role, I think he's a first round pick.
Perhaps, and the injury stuff hurt Robinson too, because that's a couple years where he's been nicked up. But he was trying to do different things. Like there were times he would play point and look good, and there were some times he'd play point and not be aggressive, and then he'd go back to playing off ball and continue not being aggressive, or fail to find a flow because he was trying to do a couple of different things.
That's fair.
He wasn't he wasn't settled into he wasn't able to find a consistent rhythm. I felt.
I would definitely agree with that. I just think the role that he played, the opportunity he got, lended to showing the NBA something that he otherwise wasn't able to show.
Mhm.
And I think it's kind of what they wanted to see because with his size, I don't think anybody in the NBA is debating whether he can play defense or not. It's more so does he
Yeah,
want to. So
yeah,
I don't feel like you have to show it at the college level if you're him. He was able to showcase like being able to create for others while also like having them create for him and he's able to knock down the open looks. And I feel like the role Ortega had to play really, really hindered his draft stock a ton. And he
yeah.
would have been drafted, don't get me wrong, but I think he's going to go back And with how much talent Kentucky has, he's going to play a lesser role and get picked pretty high, I think.
What about the weaknesses in Jaxson Robinson's game? Like, why is he where he's at now, where he may not get drafted?
Mental. He just stands around too much. Now, that might be what NBA teams want him to do, to be
Yeah,
fair.
the lack of
But
aggressiveness.
yeah, I think the fact that we're talking about like Otega Owe was the number one option when Jackson Robinson is on the team speaks volumes as to like what was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. We'll get into our categories. I have a number of different ones, but the first one is the one word to describe his game. So Dion, you're going to give your word, I'll give mine, then we'll discuss. What is your word for Jackson Robinson?
I said upside. I don't think he has the highest upside in the draft, but I think he has the most ability to go from like not necessarily being considered anything to being substantially in the NBA. Like no question, doesn't he hits free agency and has nothing to worry about.
I said inconsistent because the aggressiveness comes and goes. And you mentioned like the times he exploded, he looked awesome. There are also games where you forgot he was on the court. And you can't have that happen when you're supposed to be the guy on that team. Like it was clear he wasn't, and he's not going to be in the NBA, so it's not as big of a factor. But there's almost some Perry Jones to him,
Ooh,
where like there was no reason skill wise Perry Jones shouldn't have worked, but he just like faded it out of games too much. That's to me like the Jackson Robinson potential problem.
I like that. I also think Perry Jones' inability to want to play a role besides like give me the ball and get out the way in the NBA is a huge reason he didn't have a longer career. And I think
Yeah,
I don't see that issue happening with Jackson, but if he did go with that same mindset, he wouldn't last long.
yeah, yeah. Do you think it's more likely to hit his floor or hit his ceiling in the
I
NBA?
said ceiling. Now injuries would play a part in this. If he
Yeah.
deals with as much injuries as he did at the college level, obviously it's floor. But if he has relative health, I think it's ceiling.
I went floor. Just the floating in and out concerns me. Like that's he's got the skill, but to truly lock in consistently is a skill. And I think it's a harder one to learn.
That's true. That's,
Where do you think he should want to end up on draft night or sign with? What would be the best team fit for him to go to?
I said the Miami Heat because they don't care where you're picked. They don't care what you did in college. They're going to play the best players. And I think the Miami Heat give him the best opportunity to come in and earn something. And like I said, you could have a 10 day. If you play better than Tyler Hero, Spoelstra will play you more than Tyler Hero.
Yeah.
And they don't care about names, they don't care about egos, nothing. And I think that's the perfect landing spot for Jackson. Also, like the ball movement they play with lends to what Jackson does
Yeah.
best as well.
That's a really good spot because just the Heat culture would get him to lock in. The Heat
Yes.
culture would get him to lock in. I went with the Thunder. Couple of different reasons. When I was doing the show with Greg 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we had talked about some lottery trade ideas, and it caused me to look at the Thunder. And the Thunder, from a cap situation, need to find cheap wing solutions because they're gonna have to. You paid Shea, you just paid Caruso, you paid Hartenstein. You're gonna have to pay Chet. You're gonna have to pay J Dub. There's not money left. Lou Dort's going to be gone. I think Isaiah Joe's going to be gone. I think like a team like that who is excellent at developing has no issue taking like older, experienced college players if you're going to play a role and develop you. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like this is the same franchise that stuck with Thabo Cephalosha and Andre Roberson doing one thing because it's what they needed and they developed the rest and they hung on to them too long, right? Same one that had Perry Jones, but hung on to Perry Jones a little bit too long. I think that makes sense just in terms of a path to playing and also a franchise probably second to the Heat, which I like your Heat pick better, could maximize what he does.
I like that because I think he's case in a best. It's this isn't my best case, but now that you've said it, it would be. I'm not going to change it though, JK. That's me being a team player. I'm not going to change it, JK. I do think his best case would kind of be like a case in Wallace with size.
Yeah. We'll get into best case, worst case here in a second. But do you think he's in the league in 5 years? Where do you think he ends up
I have him as a starter in the league.
as a starter?
I think if Jackson Robinson has relative health with what he does well, he's going to play himself into a ton of money. A ton of money.
I have a him as a starter as well, but in Europe.
See, I think he's more likely to have a podcast than go to Europe. I don't think Jackson. It takes a different type of personality, I think, to play in Europe.
Or that may play into our yearbook superlative here. Or we're giving a yearbook like superlative for all of our top 80 prospects, or they're most likely to do what. Mine for him, which I'll jump in here first because it plays off of that, is he's most likely to randomly show up on Mark Pope's coaching staff.
Ooh, I could see that.
Like you're watching a game like 3 years from now, and you're like, oh, that's Jaxson Robinson, like back there holding a clipboard.
But we know it won't be PJ Washington. I'm just kidding, Kentucky. I'm just kidding. I said play himself into a nine-figure contract. I think
Okay.
I seriously think like this dude, like, and the reason I say that is that everyone, there's going to be a ton of dudes that make nine, no, maybe not a ton. There's going to be guys that make nine figures from this class. We're expecting it. No one's doubting Cooper Fly is going to make nine figures. Dylan Harper, I do doubt Ace Bailey would, but hypothetically Ace Bailey, so on and so forth. Jackson Robinson is going to play his way into that, and I think that's different than what the rest would do. And I think that's why I said upside. I think he has the biggest financial upside within this draft. He could go from being relatively nothing to a very like generational wealth.
So what does that look like then? 'Cause I assume that's probably best case scenario for Jackson
Hmm.
Robinson. What is your best case comp?
Mikal Bridges. I think he has a lot of the same if he's willing to play that role. And I don't mean the role Mikal played in Brooklyn. And I don't really mean the role he played with New York either, because I feel like that was very clunky. But in Phoenix, where he just stood there, he
Yeah.
just stood there. And he scored 15, 16 points off pure threes, fouls, hustle plays. He played incredible defense, and that's where all his energy went. And Mikal is obviously a better defender than Jackson, but we've never seen Jackson play defense when he doesn't have to worry about the other end. He doesn't have to create for himself. He doesn't have to create for others. And I
Mhm.
think if you put him in a role where he only has to worry about defense while hitting wide open looks, I'm not saying he's an all NBA defender, but he does more offensively than Mikal Bridges does to kind of offset both. And when I say 100, like nine-figure contract, that's ultimately going to be like not that much in the NBA by the time Jackson Robinson gets around to signing
Yeah.
his second deal. Like that could be like the mid-level exception by the time he comes
Yeah.
around to doing that. So I think he has an incredible upside though.
I went with Cam Johnson. Similar vibes. Just elite 3 and D guy, right? Elite 3 and D guy. Yes.
Hand up accountability. Mikal Bridges was not what I typed into the form.
What did you type into the form? I mean, you can change it.
Contavious Caldwell Pope. It's the same idea, though.
Any really good 3 and D guy is in there.
Same idea.
You can
So,
change it on the doc. You could change it on the doc. What about worst case?
I said his worst case is Kyle Kuzma.
Are you sure? Or
Yeah, well, I just double checked.
Kuzma has a worst case. It's a good case.
Hey, I'm talking about like Wizards Kuzma though, like not Lakers Kuzma that was like doing
The
stuff.
the
I'm talking about
Bucks
like
Bucks Kuzma who's out there getting cardio.
yeah, the Kuzma that's not buying into playing a role. That's not because Lakers Kuzma played defense. And I think Lakers Kuzma, if I'm being honest, I think Lakers Kuzma is a little bit better than Mikal Bridges. He just refused to buy into that role for the extent of time Mikal Bridges was willing to do so. And I think Jackson has a lot of like similar offenses to Kuzma, similar size. If he's unwilling to buy into a role, though, he will not get the leash Kuzma got to figure it out for what it's worth.
Yeah. I went with RJ Hunter.
Okay.
The reason why I went with RJ Hunter is we think of RJ Hunter as like a really good shooter, and we thought the defense would come, right? You know what RJ Hunter shot from three his last season?
Georgia State RJ Hunter?
Georgia State RJ Hunter.
He played in the NBA?
He did for a little bit. Yeah.
Really? Did the
45,
NBA know that?
45 career games played, and of course, the last picture is of him in a Hornets uniform.
Really? Did the Hornets know he was on the team?
I don't think so.
I didn't know he
But
played in the NBA, so I have no idea what he shot. I genuinely had no idea.
his last year at Georgia State, so this is the year where he hit that shot in the NCAA tournament and all that. 30.5% from three.
Mm.
Never shot 40% from three for his career, was a 35.4% three-point shooter. We thought of him as a shooter. You know, Jaxson Robinson shoots for three for his career,
After everything I said on this video, I'm not sure I want to.
35.1,
Uh,
which is solid, but he also has never shot above 43%, 43.2% from the field in
what
his
was
career.
his? What did he shoot this year?
He shot 43.2 from the field and 37.6 from three.
So that 35 to 30.
35.4 the year before that, 34.3 the year before that, 32.6, and then his first year at A&M, he shot 28.6.
I do want to like this is really tough for all the arguments I've made on this video for Jackson, but hey, listen, shout out BBN. You know what I mean? Those are my dogs. But that 35 to 37 is a massive leap because 35% is league average in the NBA.
Yeah,
And if you're shooting league average in the NBA when the line is moved up, it's tough. So at least he's above league average. And
yeah.
if he were to drop a little bit, he could still be league average.
But I said RJ Hunter because you're relying on the shot offensively, and the shot is not elite, which let's say it's not for Jaxson Robinson. Let's say it sticks around league average. And RJ Hunter's defense was a liability. And you made a good point about how we haven't seen Jaxson Robinson where he can only focus on defense, or that becomes a main thing for him. What if he does and he's still not great at it, right? Then it's ugh.
Listen, you know what they say on inside the NBA, get ready to learn blank, buddy. Whatever country he's gonna go play for.
Yep. Yeah, but Jax Robinson, I think, will be a very intriguing guy to follow his career because I do think there are a wide range of outcomes. Some that are nine-figure outcomes. Some of them are RJ Hunter like outcomes. So we'll see. It'll be fun to follow. Make sure you check out the other videos we have. This is one of 79 or one of 80. There are 79 other videos doing our scouting report for our top 80 prospects. Make sure you check all those out. Like and subscribe.